I hope that's recording. I think so. There's a recording thing on. Okay, so bonjour. On va lire le premier chapitre de Le Fantôme, so du Fantôme, de l'opéra par Gaston Leroux. Okay, I think this guy on the cover, that's Le Fantôme, but I think he looks like Voldemort. Oui, okay. So voici les personnages du roman. Okay, we'll talk more about them as we meet them. So let's read chapter 1. Que se passe-t-il à l'opéra? What is going on at the opera? Que se passe-t-il? Okay. Cette année, il se passe des événements étranges à l'opéra. On raconte en effet qu'un fantôme se promène dans les coulisses. Personne ne sait vraiment depuis quand ces rumeurs circulent. Certains disent que c'est Joseph Buquet qui en parlait en premier. Okay, so this year there's some strange events happening, se passe, at the opera. People tell, in fact, that a phantom has been walking around in the backstage wings, les coulisses. Nobody knows really when these rumors started circulating. Certain people say that it's Joseph Buquet who talked about them first. Okay. Joseph Buquet est le chef machiniste. C'est un homme calme, sérieux et travailleur. Il dit avoir rencontré dans les couloirs de l'opéra une personne qui portait un costume noir. Il pensait que c'était un spectateur, mais lorsqu'il a vu de près, il s'est rendu compte que cet effrayant personnage avait une tête de mort à la place du visage. Il était très mince, sa peau était jaune et il avait 2 trous à la place des yeux. Okay, so Joseph Buquet is the head, machinist, like the guy who runs the machines on the stage. It's a calm guy, serious, hardworking. He's said to have met in the hallways, les couloirs. So coulisses was backstage wings and couloir are hallways. So in the hallways of the opera, a person who was wearing a black costume or a black suit, that word could mean either, he thought that it was like a spectator, like a fan. But when he saw him up close, de près, he realized that this scary, frightening character had a head of death in the place of his face. He was very skinny, slender. His skin was yellow, and he had 2 holes in the place of eyes. Oh la la. That was for you, Abrielle. Oh la la. Okay. Depuis ce jour-là, plusieurs employés de l'opéra ont assisté à d'inquiétants phénomènes. Pimpin, le chef de pompiers, raconte qu'une tête de feu l'a poursuivi lorsqu'il était dans les sous-sols. Il est catégorique. La tête de feu n'avait pas de corps. Okay, so since that day there, ce jour-là, several employees of the opera have, this usually means attended, but here it's more like witnessed, have been in attendance at some worrisome phenomenon. Pimpin is the head firefighter. It makes sense that you have a firefighter for the opera house back then. Back in the day, a lot of it was candle lit, so things could catch on fire very quickly. So the person who was in charge of all of that. Anyway, Pimpin told of a head of fire that followed him, pursued him when he was in the basements, les sous-sols. He's categorical. The head of fire didn't have a body, just a head of fire. Okay. Ces histoires et ces rumeurs terrorisent tous les personnels. Les jeunes danseuses sont effrayées. Selon elles, le fantôme est responsable de tous les incidents qui ont lieu à l'opéra. So these stories and these rumors are terrorizing all of the personnel. The young dancers are very frightened. According to them, the girls, the fantôme is responsible for all of the incidents that have taken place at the opera. Okay? Don't know what happened there? Blame it on le fantôme. Okay? Un soir, la danseuse étoile, Sorelli, est en train de relire le discours qu'elle a préparé pour la fête de départ des deux directeurs, Messieurs Desbiens et Poligny. Soudain, plusieurs jeunes danseuses entrent dans sa loge en criant très fort. « Nous l'avons vu! Nous l'avons vu! » l'une d'entre elles. « Nous avons vu le fantôme! » Okay, so one evening, the star dancer, la danseuse étoile, her name is Sorelli, she was, okay, remember, être en train de, to be in the process of something, to be in the middle of something. So she's in the middle of rereading the speech, le discours, that she had prepared for the departing party, the like going away party, for the two directors, Sirs, Desbiens et Poligny. So Messieurs is the plural of Monsieur. Okay, so two guys. Suddenly, several young dancers enter into her. Now, this word loge, we're going to see quite a bit in this novel because it has two meanings. It means both dressing room, like it's being used here, and also theater box. Okay, so here, her dressing room. They enter into her dressing room. They're shouting, I-N-G, the A-N-T, shouting very loudly. We saw him, yells one of them. We saw the fantôme. So, la Sorelli ne croit pas vraiment les jeunes filles, mais elle est très superstitieuse et cette histoire de fantôme l'effraie facilement. Elle essaie de cacher sa peur et dit aux danseuses « Il ne faut pas avoir peur, le fantôme n'existe pas. » So La Sorelli, the star dancer, does not really believe the young girls, but she is very superstitious, and the story of the fantôme scares her easily. So the L apostrophe la is the her here. Easily, M-E-N-T, like L-Y. So she tries to hide her fear, and she says to the dancers, it's not necessary to have fear. Like, you don't have to be scared. The fantôme does not exist. Mais, nous l'avons vu de nos propres yeux, dit l'une des jeunes filles, et Gabrielle l'a vu lui aussi. But we saw him with our own eyes, said one of the young girls, and Gabrielle saw him, he did too. Gabriel, le maître de chant, demanda la Sorelli. Et qu'est-ce qu'il a dit? Il a raconté qu'il était dans le bureau des directeurs lorsqu'un homme étrange est entré. C'était le Père Saint. Vous le connaissez? À l'opéra, tout le monde connaît le Père Saint. Les jeunes danseuses ont très peur de lui. Elles pensent qu'il a le mauvais œil. Okay? So Gabriel saw him too. It's not just us. So Gabriel, the master of song, like the maestro, okay, asks the Sorelli, and what did he say? Well, he said that he was in the director's office when a strange man entered. It was the Persian guy. Do you know him? At the opera, everyone knows the Persian guy. The young dancers are very scared of him. They think he's got a bad eye. Okay. I don't think like literally a bad eye, but like, you know, kind of weird. Okay. So le Persan, the Persian guy, like a guy from Persia. Persia is like modern day Iran. Okay, but back then it was called Persia. So do you know him? Do you know the Persian guy? Oui, je le connais. Mais que s'est-il passé? Demande la Sorelli, visiblement inquiète. So yeah, I know him, but what happened? Asks la Sorelli, visibly worried. Eh bien, Gabriel a vu le fantôme derrière le Persan. Il était effrayé. So, eh bien, it's like a stalling, like an Gabriel saw the ghost behind the Persian guy. He was frightened. Okay. Et à quoi ressemble le fantôme? So, what does he look like? À quoi ressemble le fantôme? Il est exactement comme l'a décrit Joseph Bouquet. Il porte un costume noir et il a une tête de mort à la place du visage, répond l'une des jeunes filles. So he's exactly like Joseph Bouquet described him. He's wearing a black costume or a black suit, has a head of death in the place of his face, responds one of the young girls. Okay. Ma mère dit que Joseph Bouquet ferait mieux de se taire, poursuit la voix basse Meg, l'une des danseuses. Elle dit aussi qu'il faut laisser le fantôme tranquille. Il n'aime pas être dérangé, surtout dans sa loge. So my mother says that Joseph Bouquet would do better to literally silence himself, to keep quiet. Okay, se taire is the verb that tais-toi, shut up, comes from, silence yourself. So my mom says that Joseph Bouquet would be better off just like keeping quiet, pursues the low voice of Meg, one of the dancers. She also says that it's necessary to leave le fantôme alone, like leave him at peace. He doesn't like to be bothered, like disturbed, dérangé, especially in his, now here's that word again, loge, which can be both dressing room and theater box, and here it means theater box. So he doesn't like to be bothered, especially in his theater box. Le fantôme a une loge, demandent en même temps les jeunes filles. The Phantom has a theater box? They all ask at the same time, the young girls. Oui, le numéro 5. C'est ma mère qui s'occupe de cette loge, dit Meg. Elle doit rester libre pour le fantôme. C'est un ordre de directeur. Yes, number 5. It's my mother who takes care of this theater box, says Meg. It looks like she, but it, talking about la loge. It must stay free, like it must remain open for the fantôme. It's an order of the directors. Okay, so libre means free, as in not occupied, not busy. It's different from gratuit, which means free, like it doesn't cost any money. This is free, as in don't put anybody in there. Okay. Ta mère a déjà vu le fantôme, alors? Demande la Sorelli, ironique. So your mother has already seen, déjà vu, right? Already seen. Your mother has already seen the ghost. So asked Sorelli, ironically. Non, explique Meg. Elle ne l'a jamais vu, car on ne peut pas le voir. Toutes les histoires qu'on a racontées sur la tête de mort ou sur sa tête de feu sont absurdes. Par contre, elle a entendu sa voix. C'est normal. C'est elle qui lui donne le programme. So has your mom already seen him then? No, explains Meg. She has never, jamais, she has never seen him, car, a synonym for parce que. So she's never seen him because we don't like want to see him. All these stories that people tell about his head of death or his head of fire are absurd. So I want to look at a grammar thing here. We're going to look at it several times, and then eventually there's going to be an activity on it in a later chapter. So I'm going to start pointing it out now. But this is what French 2 is about to start working on. So all the stories that have been told, okay? So raconter is an avoir verb in the passé composé. So that they told in the past, avoir, past participle. So why is there an extra es on this avoir verb? And try to remember back to last year. So normally you only make agreement with être and not with avoir, but if there's a preceding direct object, that's when you make agreement with avoir. So all the stories that one told, who or what did they tell? Stories. So because stories, the direct object comes before, then my past participle here is going to agree with stories, which is feminine and plural. So that's why raconter has an E and an S on it. Okay. Again, that's because there was a preceding direct object. That's why you're making agreement with avoir. Otherwise, you usually just do it with être. Okay. So all these stories are just absurd. On the other hand, par contre, she heard, like on the contrary, she heard his voice. It's normal. And it's her who gives him the program, like for whatever show it is. Okay? So, les jeunes danseuses se regardent. Elles ont du mal à croire l'histoire de Meg. So, I know if it has a se in front of it, it's usually a reflexive verb because that's how we've learned them. But they look exactly alike. There's some verbs that look like this that are called reciprocal verbs. And it means just like what it sounds like, they're reciprocating. So the young dancers are looking at each other, okay? So they're looking at each other as well. They're reciprocating the look. So they're all looking around each other and they're having a hard time. Elles ont du mal. They're having a hard time believing Meg's story. En tout cas, ma mère dit que Joseph Bouquet a tort de s'occuper des choses qui ne le regardent pas. Le fantôme n'aime pas ça. Il pourrait... Okay. In any case, my mother says that Joseph Bouquet is wrong tort, wrong, to like take care of, to like worry himself, to get involved in things that are not looking at him, but really like things that are not his business. Okay. So like he should not be into things that are not his business. The fantôme doesn't like that. He could, point, 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 mais à ce moment-là, une autre danseuse ouvre la porte de la loge. Elle est effrayée. So at that moment there, à ce moment-là, another dancer opens the door to the here dressing room. She is frightened. C'est effrayeux, hurle-t-elle. It's frightening, she yells. So I could have said elle hurle, she yells, but we flip the subject and the verb here. And when you flip the subject and the verb and two vowels touch, they insert a random letter T. Okay? It's frightening, she yells, hurle-t-elle. Que se passe-t-il? Demande la danseuse étoile. Here again, they flip the il se passe. So they flip the il and the se passe and two vowels touch. So a random letter T, just because que se passe-t-il doesn't sound good. Que se passe-t-il does. Hurle doesn't sound good, but hurle-t-elle does. So, que se passe-t-il? What is happening? What is going on? Que se passe-t-il? The same thing as qu'est-ce qui se passe. Okay? Que se passe-t-il? Joseph Bouquet est mort. Il s'est pendu. On a retrouvé son corps dans un des sous-sols de la Seine. Okay? So, what's wrong? What's going on? Joseph Bouquet died. He hanged himself. Il s'est pendu. They found his body in one of the basements of the stage. Okay, so if you've ever seen the musical version of this, the movie musical version of this, this does happen, but much, much later. So this book mostly follows the musical. Keep in mind that the book came before the musical. So a lot of things happen out of order, or there's characters in this story that didn't make it into the musical version of it. So not everything works out exactly the same. But so this scene did happen just much later in the musical version. Okay. So bientôt, tout l'opéra est au courant de la triste nouvelle. Par précaution, on décide de ne rien dire au directeur pour ne pas gâcher la fête d'adieu. So bientôt, good word to know, soon. Soon, the whole opera is up to date, au courant. They're all up to date with the sad news, so they're all aware. As a precaution, they decide to say nothing, rien, to the directors so as to not spoil, gâcher, spoil the going away party. Okay, so one last grammatical thing here. Normally, ne pas goes around a conjugated verb, right? But after certain words like pour, de, sont, I'm trying to think of others. There's some certain words that have to have an infinitive after them. So like pour, gâcher, and usually pour means for, but when it's followed by an infinitive, it translates better as in order to. So in order to spoil, but we want to say in order to not spoil, but because we had to have an infinitive, ne pas has to go around a conjugated verb. There's not a conjugated verb, so it goes in front of the infinitive. Okay? So pour, ne pas gâcher. So again, a ne pas goes in front of an infinitive if there's nothing to go around, like a conjugated verb. So anyway, this guy just died in the basement of the stage, and they don't want to spoil the party, so they're not going to tell the directors. Okay, so what you're going to do here pour les devoirs, we've just read the chapter and translated it together, so I want you to write out the whole sentence. Okay, I will not give you credit if you don't write out the whole sentence. So, à l'opéra, le fantôme se promène généralement, and then write the answer that goes there with it. Okay, down here you're going to answer them in complete sentences. So, quel type de personne est Joseph Bouquet? You'll find a complete sentence to answer that. If you can use a quote or something directly from the text, feel free to do that. Okay. And I don't think we did this grammar about direct and indirect discourse. In fact, I know we skipped that. So your last one will be, you're going to write out this paragraph, write it out, builds character, okay? And then underline where you're going to be putting a word in there, okay? So this is basically like a newspaper article that tells about what just happened in this scene. So, okay. That's what you're doing. I'm going to try to figure out how to turn off this recording. So, merci.